The short term I see unfortunately more or less of a standstill, because as we all know there are too many allowances around, too many credits, too few emissions and too few market players who are willing to make the market. So I think it will be a stable, very quiet, slow market.
How did this happen?
I think there are various factors. I think one driver, of course, is the economic downturn, which led to less emissions and consequently the need for less allowances. Also the uncertainty about the future of international climate regulations played a role. And then probably the oversupply of European allowances in the market and the oversupply of Kyoto units in the market, which drove down the price tremendously, which basically affected both companies who didn't have the incentive anymore to reduce their emissions, what it is all about in the first place, and also led to lower prices.
What kind of consequences this has for the ETS market?
I think the consequence is that unfortunately people and companies, players are leaving the market. I think you will have seen quite a number of CVs of carbon traders floating around. Trading companies are selling off their carbon trading business, are closing down their carbon trading desks. The same for companies, advisors, law firms. I'm a lawyer myself. You see a decline in law firms, a number of lawyers involved in this topic, which I think is a pity, is a shame, because you're losing the infrastructure, people who have the know-how of how environmental markets work or should work. If they are leaving, if they are choosing another area of expertise, you're basically saying farewell to something we built up together the last 10 years.
But in 3-4 years we need a new contract. In 2015, there should happen something before 2015.
Well, I think that's a fair point. I think the general expectation is, yes, there will be a new international agreement on climate change, which will most likely include market mechanisms. But 2015 is still a long time away, and then it is the assumption, the hope that something in 2015 will happen. But that's far from certain. At the end of the day, it depends on the negotiations of those 194 countries within the UNFCCC, and it needs to be seen whether they will meet that deadline.
The election of the new president in the United States won't help either.
Well, yes and no. If a new president will elected, you're right. No movement will be made in the US for the next 4 years. However, if the current president is allowed a second term, then I think that is the only window of opportunity during the second part of his second term, so the last 2 years of his second term. That may be for him the window of opportunity, provided he has a friendly Capitol Hill behind him.
What do you think the point of view of the Chinese are?
I think they have figured out how it works. Well, that's stating the obvious. I think they have benefited tremendously from the current Kyoto regulations, and I mean, good for them. I mean, they did a terrific job. Remember that initially India was the to-go-to country for international carbon projects, but within the period of, I think, 1 year, they were overtaken by China big time, because the Chinese government managed to cooperate within the system to make CDM projects attractive for the market. So I think now, 70%, 80% of all CDM credits come from China. And I think also because of their know-how of the market, they will probably play a key role in any new international agreement.